On this edition of Native Report, we'll visit the Chathlopotle Plankhouse. We'll learn how one scholarship program is benefiting many Native students. And we'll learn of Frog Bay Tribal National Park, the first of its kind in the United States. We also learn something new about Indian country and hear from our elders on this Native Report.
Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee Medwakatan Sioux Community, the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, and the Blandin Foundation.
Welcome to Native Report. I'm Stacy Thunder. The Chathlopotle Plankhouse, located on the Ridgefield National Wildlife Refuge in Washington State, is a full-scale Chinookian structure. Thousands of these longhouses once lined the Columbia River. None remain today except for this replica.
This house is a Chinook plank house, and it's made entirely of western red cedar. This is a representative house of a village that was about 1.5 miles from this site down on the Columbia River. They had 14 houses, this being about a mid-sized house. This is 80 foot long. There were houses as large as 200 feet long. That village down there was called Chathlopotle. Today it's translated more like Chathlopotle. The title of this house is the Chathlopotle Plankhouse, but Chathlopotle was the village's name, and it was noted by Lewis and Clark when they passed through this area towards the mouth of the river.
On the sunny day, an eagle flies over the Ridgefield National Wildlife Refuge, where a replica of a traditional Chinookan structure, a plank house, sits.
These houses traditionally would have been from the mouth of the river as far upriver as the timbers were available. Thousands and thousands of these houses along the Columbia River and actually up. Usually Chinooks controlled upwards of 5 miles or so up each major tributary. So there were houses up there also. So just lots of these houses all over the place. Some very large villages, some houses were temporary summer houses. This house was actually a collaboration of partners, Fish and Wildlife Service, which is the property here, is the refuge property. So Fish and Wildlife Service, the Chinook Indian Nation, and PSU were involved as a partnership. And this actually came about as a result of the Lewis and Clark Legacy project at the time. It was a monumentous undertaking in that the amount of timber that it took, probably upwards of 30 truckloads of cedar, had to be, for the most part, gathered through donations. And so when I hired on as the project manager and tribal liaison, early on in the project, a big part of my responsibilities was the gathering of that cedar, making contacts with national forests and national parks as a way to try to find enough cedar to put the house together. And I think we finally wrapped up in March of 2006 by the time it was erected, and we had the openings in the house. We referenced both just passed down information through the tribe, but also there were a number of drawings and references from early explorers and people that visited the region. Even Lewis and Clark, for example, Paul Kane did a number of fairly detailed structural drawings.
The painting on the front side is a welcoming figure.
The round hole is the traditional entrance to the house, and in most houses that's the only way in or out. And its positioning makes it difficult to rush into the house in an attack situation So anybody entering is rather vulnerable. They have to lower their head down to get in through that door, and that puts them at the disadvantage to whoever might be inside waiting. When a guest arrives, a guest enters the house in the traditional way, which is to enter backwards with your head bowed down to get through there. And because you're so exposed at that point, it's an honorable way, or humbling way to enter the house. This house represents a being, a living person, and when you enter the traditional door, as we did, you've entered the poor end of the house. And you'll notice on these beams, the support beams, as you progress towards the wealth end of the house, things increase in the amount of decoration. So this first pole is fairly simply decorated. The next pole is painted and has some design elements on it. The pole after that is heavily decorated on both sides, and then the final pole is the most decorated, the largest carving. What you see on this post is a representation of the owners, the house owners, or the headman's parents. This being his father on this side, and on the opposite side, a very similarly carved figure representing his mother. Carved in very traditional Chinookan elements that help distinguish the Chinookan art style from, say, Coast Salish, Puget Sound Salish, exposed ribs, and these geometric zigzag forms and kneecap type elements. The facial features are all very classical Columbia River art style. And beyond that, on the big carving in the back of the wall is a representation of the owner himself, of all his wealth. He's wearing a cougar skin robe. He's got a belt on with a double-bladed knife. And up above, he's wearing a headdress with representations of his tomanowos, or spirit power, which are showing wolves. So it's just an elaborate carving at the wealthiest end of the house, showing the extreme wealth and status of that individual.
The Plankhouse is open to the public throughout much of the year. It is also used for the Chinookan winter ceremony.
The tribe uses it for their primary winter gathering ceremony in January, which commemorates the time when we moved from our outside activities and moved into the houses to do our winter dances and our storytelling and preparing for that next spring's harvest of fish and goods. And so that ceremony is very important. We'll have upwards of 300 people in the house. Both fires are going. This is about the size for this house, 2 fires. Some of the longer houses might have an additional fire pit. But like a modern day kitchen, these were kind of the hubs where people gathered around and had their meals. There were usually 3 meals a day served. So what you see on this side are bunks, sleeping quarters, but they also doubled as storage. Underneath a lot of planks of these floors, there would be actual storage pits dug. On this side would have been an exact duplicate of that side. They would have both been sleeping quarters and storage quarters. We put bleachers in here to help accommodate some of the larger gatherings that we put on, such as the winter gathering that we mentioned. To me, because it's the only existing truly Chinookan house, I'm quite proud of the fact that it's here, that the public is able to come and get a true understanding of what our culture is about. And to know the house could be here for 100 years, that's an awful lot of people influenced and impacted by this house.
Did you know the American Indian people of the Pacific Northwest constructed their plank houses primarily from cedar trees? The native people of the Northwest maintained a respect for cedar and the gifts cedar provided to many generations. Cedar logs comprise the main support system for plank houses. These planks were harvested from living trees, and this was done in a sustainable method. The Indians of the Olympic Peninsula wanted to ensure that cedar trees were maintained for future generations. The properties of cedar trees include a straight grain, very few knots in the wood, and impressive weather resistance. The oldest plank house village is in Katselis Canyon in western British Columbia. This village is estimated to be over 3,000 years old.
Next, an endowed scholarship established by the Shakopee Sioux community at the University of Minnesota celebrated a milestone with one of its first graduates. Students from many Native nations benefit because of the generosity of SMSE, whose council recognizes that education is essential. On this summer day, Corina Berry, a former University of Minnesota student, is visiting the U of M campus. Corina is the first Shakopee Sioux Community Scholarship recipient to earn a degree.
Shakopee was one of the biggest scholarships, and I got that scholarship for grad school, which I went for social work. I did child welfare focus. That was a 2-year program, and I just finished this past May. And ever since, I've been working for Hennepin County, and it's been great. My first year of college, I was so scared, and I didn't know what it meant to be a college student, and then I made the dean's list, and back then they had General College, which is the smaller college inside of the U of M, you know, smaller than College of Liberal Arts, and it was the college made for kids like me, like, you know, who needed more support and needed more focus, and then it helped you get into the bigger schools like College of Liberal Arts or whatever you're interested in. And so there was a lot of support set in place back then which aren't there anymore, and so I don't know how students of color are making it now, because I wouldn't have made it without, you know, that support of General College and then the cultural centers and the different, you know, they have the American Indian Studies Department, things like that.
The SMSC Endowed Scholarship is a matching one with the University of Minnesota.
It was established 3 years ago when the TCF Bank Stadium was going up. The tribe did a donation for the Minnesota Tribal Nations Plaza that showcases all 11 tribes on the plaza. And as part of that donation, the tribe donated $2.5 million to an endowed scholarship that was matched by the University of Minnesota specifically for Native American students that are either enrolled or eligible for enrollment in a federally recognized tribe. It is a 4-year scholarship, which is kind of unusual when it comes to scholarships. So, and up to $10,000 per year, which is a nice chunk of money. It is based on your FAFSA, so you still have to fill out all the federal paperwork, and then it's based on need. One of the nice parts about this scholarship is that it's not just for tuition, books, and fees. It can go for the cost of living. I know as Native American people, oftentimes we have family issues or our students are older than the average age, so it's nice to be able to have travel expenses and, you know, daycare, housing on a scholarship, because many scholarships don't provide that.
The university had what they call the the President's Match program, and so that matched every dollar. So it's in essence is about works out to be kind of $5 million, and it's an endowed scholarship. And so the endowed scholarship, what it means is the principal off of that. You know, they estimate annually what the principal should be, and that's what actually goes. Is given out as far as scholarships, and so it can be a bit confusing because people hear the big number, but we're not giving all that out, of course, every year. You want to make sure that this goes on forever, and the fact that it's endowed, it will go on forever, which is a good thing. What I should say is that the scholarship is a need-based scholarship, again, which can be tricky because, you know, people don't always understand that, but it's need-based. And so what that means is what we look at is the cost of attendance for students attending any of these institutions minus their expected family contribution minus other gifts that they get, then that equals the need. And then this scholarship fills that need up to $10,000. In addition to undergraduate students, for selected graduate and professional programs, students are in those programs are also eligible. So like medical school, public health, nursing, education, the new Master of Tribal Administration and Government at UMD, for example. So those students coming into those programs can also apply. So it's both undergraduate and graduate students would need.
Students may be the direct beneficiaries of the scholarship, but their home communities also benefit.
We had our first graduate last year, Karina Berry, exceptional young lady. She's had many hurdles in her life that she's overcome, and she's done so well. She's one of our true stars at the university, but also is going on and doing some wonderful things in the community.
I always knew, and I always said I was going to give back to my community and stay in my community. I just, over time, really developed and kind of determined what that meant to me. And while I was working at the Division of Indian Work, my senior year, or 2009, the year after I graduated from my undergraduate career, I was working with long-term foster care youth who had since become homeless since aging out. And during that time, I worked with over 40 different youth, both urban and from reservations that came down to the cities. And it was just really hard to see these youth that were just homeless, living on the streets. You know, they had multiple placements, and they just had a lot of issues coming out of the foster care system. And that really motivated me and wanted me to go into social work.
We're really looking for somebody who's active in their community, both culturally and academically. Obviously, they already have to be admitted to the University of Minnesota, one of the campuses, so that kind of takes away having to look at any of the academics because they've already been admitted. So we just want active students that have potential to return to their communities and give back.
My uncle was a member of the Bad River Band, and he married a Red Cliff tribal member, and they had an agricultural lease there. Their home and barn was built by the WPA project under Roosevelt, and they lived there until they are both deceased now. And so I, as a young man, I spent a lot of time out of school up to their place, and my uncle, and of course there was no facilities or electricity out that way, so they pretty much lived off the land, and there was ample game, fur birds, and so a lot of the meat that they eat or had for their dinners was stuff that he trapped or hunted or caught. So I spent a lot of time in learning the process of trapping and hunting.
Frog Bay Tribal National Park is the first of its kind in the United States. There are no other tribally owned or controlled parks open to the public. This rare gem on the shore of Lake Superior is of great spiritual significance to the Red Cliff Nation. Native Report attended a ceremony where the land was formally transferred to the band.
Indians across the country have been victimized somewhat by some of the policies that have been sent down through the BIA and the bureaucracies, and one of those policies were to set allotted lands that would a loophole to set them free instead of keeping them. They were in trusts to start with, and it's sad that we've lost so much land. At least this is one small portion of our land coming back, and we hope that it'll lead to other acquisitions.
On this February morning, newly fallen snow blankets Frog Bay Tribal National Park. The park is a silent testament to the sovereignty of the Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa.
Initially, when we sat down with the Bayfield Regional Conservancy, we had talked about the different parcels that the tribe was interested in regaining, and this one was the top priority, the Frog Bay parcel. So then we thought about, well, what would we do? What would be the purpose of the land? And out of this guy's mouth came Frog Bay Tribal National Park. Mm-hmm. And we thought it was an excellent idea. So why can't we have our own national park?
That's right.
So that's where it came from. It was his idea, and we jumped on it.
Right, and the reason for that, I think, in our discussions, is as you heard earlier from our elders and some of our other members and such, is number one, we're sovereign. Number one, we're sovereign. Number two, we're at the same level as any other government, not only in the United States, but around the world. So with that, the essence of who we are as Chippewa people, not just Red Cliff people, but Chippewa people throughout this land, is a tribal national park.
Owners David and Marjorie Johnson sold the 88 acres at half its appraised market value to the band in partnership with the Bayfield Regional Conservancy.
It's a remarkable thing that all the pieces came together. David Johnson first told me of his interest in trying to find a way to preserve this land more than 10 years ago. And so for the Johnsons, thank you very much. And thank you for your kind gifts that I will deliver to them. Thank you.
I see the Conservancy's role in that partnership as being able to facilitate acquisition of non-tribal lands that are within the reservation. In other words, land that is non-native ownership. The landowner, Mr. Johnson, and his wife, Marjorie Johnson, they're getting older, and they're concerned about the next generation and the transition of their land to the next generation. And they love that place so much that they wanted to make sure that it would be protected forever. And so it was a natural thing to think, well, let's work with Red Cliff and get it back, get the property back into their ownership. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency, or NOAA, has a program called KELP for short, and that stands for Coastal Estuarine Land Conservation Program. And the purpose of that program is to buy coastal lands. So that includes the ocean shorelines and the Great Lakes.
Development of the property will be kept to a minimum. The plan is to keep the park as pristine as possible.
There is a opportunity for our membership to go down to the lake and maybe launch a boat to even go fishing. Also to go down to the lake, put the canoe in the water, and go around the corner and harvest wild rice, which is also in that particular slough. So it's more open, is indicated by some of our members expressing be able to walk your own land is very monumental, I think, in our community. The actions that we are going to do today as Chippewa people and non-Chippewa people, the actions we do today is going to have a dramatic effect 50 years, 100 years down the road. To not only our Chippewa children, but I think to all children.
I can say that the BRC, they're all about land protection and conservation. And that's also some of the same principles that the Red Cliff Band has. In fact, some of our zoning regulations, setbacks are more stricter even than the counties. So we've always been about protection of the lakefront lands, and we want to make sure that this parcel is also protected and kept in its pristine nature. And I can't say enough how I feel about the Johnsons, Marjorie and David, and their donation to us. I mean, they've only charged us half of what the value of the land was. $488,000 was their donation to us, and that's a lot. And I can't thank them enough. But they have the same principles that we have as a government.
For more information about Native Report or the stories we've covered, look for us on the web at nativereport.org and on Facebook. Thank you for spending this time with your friends and neighbors here on Native Report. I'm Stacy Thunder. See you next time.
Stacy Thunder is a member of and legal counsel for the Red Lake Nation, and Tad Johnson is a member of the Boys Fort Band of Chippewa and is chair for the American Indian Studies Department on the campus of the University of Minnesota Duluth. Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee Sioux Community, the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, and the Blandin Foundation.